Just getting things started. Hi, Brian. Welcome.
Hey, Logan.
Do you want to test? I mean, it's just like Zoom, so let me make you co-host. So that's the only
Okay.
other difference than normal Zoom.
Are you ready for me to share my screen?
Yep. As co-host, you can take over uh, the screen sharing stuff. If you want to test it, go ahead. Usually we'll do intro stuff. So we'll probably start maybe like 10 after, I would say. But yeah, it's good to troubleshoot here before everyone starts arriving.
Yep. I'll do that real quick. Let's see.
Yep, I can see it.
Cool, thanks.
Can you check? Let's see. I want to see. I want to see if you can see my presenter notes if I do it this way. Presenter view.
You're doing the Google. I mean, I see the Chrome tab open and your tabs, your email.
That's not good. Let's try this again. Hmm. Turn to meeting. New share. How about this? That do anything different?
No.
Not at all. All right. Let's stop the share. Let's see. How about this?
No, maybe just close the Chrome tabs and the URL bar might go away.
Oh, I see. You're just saying you can see the URL bar. Yeah, it's. I think it's a presenter view. Okay, so we will not be doing that.
Well, just close your emails, and then maybe it'll when it goes down to one tab.
Nah, it's still there.
Okay,
it's okay. I didn't know if that would work, and it seems that it won't. So,
okay,
no big deal. So if I open speaker notes, you can see my speaker notes now.
Nope. It's still the presenter. Yeah, so it's just that I could see the URL bar and the tabs and stuff. So
that's not the end of the world. Okay, I'll stop share. Who knew there'd be so much difficulty in sharing a screen over Zoom?
I know, the thing that everybody uses. Although I think there's some Zoom holdouts that are like anti-Zoom. I've run across a few. But yeah, it's all good.
Super clear. There we go.
I guess I'll put my PSA back up here for a couple more minutes. Like, all right, time to update things. Like switching PHP versions locally has just become like a hassle. So I'm like, all right, somebody needs to say something. Because like I have composer packages that have just PHP 7, and then like how like haven't added 8, it doesn't work, or it's like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the single pipe and the double pipe? I don't actually know.
The composer, the official, both are supported, and they're not likely to remove the single pipe, but the official correct way of doing things is double pipe.
I see.
So if you care about correctness in things not breaking in the future, double pipe's the way to go.
Got it.
Oh, Bobby's here. Hang on. Where did I find the freaking participants thing? All right. Hello, Bobby. How are you doing? Like, new background.
Not bad.
You're in the office or something?
Oh,
Oh, okay. That looks more familiar.
I'm in my live stream mode without the green screen.
Yeah. There we go. All right. I came up with a. I did do a slide for you, Brian. I used your LinkedIn, so swap over
Great.
that.
Thank you. Oh yeah, perfect.
Oh yeah. All right. I think people are joining now. So I guess I'll do a little bit about the YouTube comment stuff. So we have comments turned off, chat turned off on the webinar. But if you would like to chat with your fellow PHP people, there's a YouTube live stream. If you Awesome Tech Videos is the channel, or if somebody wants to ask a question, we can answer the question with the link to the YouTube stream. But that is the best place for kind of like live discussion. We will pull the Q&A questions for Brian from the Q&A in Zoom, but also we will watch the YouTube chat as well. So either or, but that's kind of how we've been doing things and working well so far. think maybe a couple more, 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started doing intro stuff. I think everybody's here. We'll just give people a couple minutes to filter in. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody got their vaccine or somewhere in that process. Bobby, is there the gas shortage or panic happening in Boston? Or I didn't see where in the Northeast it was. Like everybody was losing their
Yeah, not
mind.
that I'm aware of. I think it's all in the Southeast right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's definitely panic here. One of the gas stations, like 15 minutes from me, was out of gas earlier.
Everybody's like, all right, I got to fill up.
It's not as bad as it made out to be, though. Like, I haven't seen any lines or anything like that. Just like one random station out of gas.
I read that there was a big shortage of tanker truck drivers, though, and that's going to cause problems in the summer. It's like people were just retiring early, or just because they were out of work during the pandemic, they were just like, I guess I'll retire now. And that's the story I read anyway. And there's just a huge shortage right now. It's going to be a problem in July or something. But that whole pipeline hack thing didn't help.
Yeah. Everybody loses their mind. That happened a couple times here in Austin. Pandemic, and before that, yeah, people just freak out and then like artificially cause the shortage, like make it worse, you know. So
are people getting rid of toilet paper down there to make room for the gas?
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's what you start making torches, I think, you know, with the toilet paper, and then put the gas on it. I think that works, right? All right. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started. So yeah, I'll go ahead and go first, and then Bobby and Chris. But thank you everyone for joining us. Merge PHP May 2021. We've officially been doing this, I think, for 13 months now. Here as Merge PHP, could be wrong, but it's going well, and looking forward to doing more of these online events. I think this is a good way to get people interested in PHP, and good opportunity to speak. So if you're interested in speaking, there is a link on the Austin PHP page. We should really get it added to the other ones, but there is a form to fill out. Here, let me kind of show you what I'm looking at here. So like on our event here, down at the bottom, if you're interested in speaking, fill out this form, and that emails what you send to the three of us. But Merge PHP is Boston, Atlanta, and Austin. We're just started streaming on the Austin Tech Videos YouTube. There's some PHP content and other meetup content on that channel as well, if you're interested. But that is kind of getting started here on a little bit about us. We've been the longest running tech group here in Austin, around since 2002. We used to do 2 meetings a month, a learning-focused one and then a beverage subgroup. Might start up the beverage subgroup here in another month or so. Maybe hopefully events, in-person events at some point. We started doing a conference here in Austin a couple years ago. If you're interested in a regional conference, check out longhornphp.com. Tickets are available, early bird tickets, and the CFP is open till June 30th. So check that out if you want to come visit Austin in October. It is a really good time of the year to visit Austin, and we always have a lot of fun. So check that out. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here was the Medium publication that I started on DevOps, but also PHP, and that's going okay. We're up to 26 issues, but do that every week on Mondays. So if you're interested in contributing to this, definitely hit me up on social media, and I would love to chat. So that's it for me. For Austin, I'm going to pass it over here to Bobby, and don't forget to plug Gene's thing.
Don't worry, it's in the slides. See if I can get it right this time. This will stop sharing on the screen. How's that look? You see my slides?
Like it.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, I'm Bobby Cahill. I am the lead organizer of Boston PHP. I run the group with Gene Babin, who handles all of our virtual self-study stuff, which I'll get to in a few minutes. Let me go. There we go. Our home is on meetup.com. This is the link. You'll see the link again later. We are on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter. We usually announce the meetups events. Like I try to do it a week ahead of time, but it depends on when we have a speaker or various other things that'll affect when I announce. But we usually try to announce a little ahead of time on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. We have a private group on Facebook. If you join the group and you don't get a response, it's a private group because we used to get spammed a lot. And if you join the group and we don't accept you right away, just send one of us a message and we'll join you. We'll add you to the group. Same thing with LinkedIn. We also have a group on LinkedIn. It's a private group. I announce the meetups in all 3 of those places, as well as if you're a member of Boston PHP on meetup.com, you'll get an email notification whenever we have an event. We've been around since 2002, and that's back when it was just 4 or 5 people in a bookstore or a coffee shop, and it's grown since then. We've had 282 events, more or less. That's an estimate, but I'm not going to get into why I had to do an estimate. But we have 3,835 members as of today, and this is our focus. We focus on we're all about education, idea sharing, and open source. Basically about sharing ideas, information, and code, and we do that through in-person meetups. We used to do that through in-person meetups. We do that through self-study groups. So in-person meetups is where we give the talks, where you can come and network and hear a new topic or some idea sharing. Self-study groups is where you can learn. It's more like learning programming or learning a language, or in the case of the next one coming up, learning how to do Agile using Trello or whatever. And then virtual meetups, which is what we're doing now. You can contact me. Again, this is our meetup link. You can contact if you have any questions about events, general, you want to give a talk, someone who might be interested in giving a talk, you want to hear about a topic, anything, just or you just want to chat about PHP, just contact me on. You can go in meetup.com. In the Boston PHP group, you can just send me a message there. And if you have a question about virtual self-study groups, you can contact Gene through Boston PHP. We have an upcoming season of one of our virtual self-study groups called Agile Appetizer, where you can, again, if you go to the meetup page, you'll see the season. If you sign up for that before it starts on May 30th, meetup doesn't let you join after the start date, but the idea of the virtual self-study groups is a bunch of people interested in learning a topic get together virtually, and they choose someone. I believe they'll have a captain. Someone will be like the captain who will kind of help guide people, and everybody agrees on a book to learn from, and you'll do something along the lines of one chapter a week. Read the book and do the exercises and share them online, and then you can help each other through the exercises, and through the forums page on Meetup, you can help each other learn the topic. A lot of people we've been doing this for a long time, and there's a lot of people who have learned a lot of languages and things this way. So tonight's presentation is static analysis with PHP Stan, and I think Chris is going to give a more direct introduction. So I'm just gonna leave it at that and hand it over to Chris.
All right, thank you very much. Screen share. Just a quick run through. I'm Chris Bruck. I think most people here probably know who I am, at least at this point. I've been having so many meetings. It's not advancing my slides. There we go. I just want to mention real quickly our video sponsor, Variux.com. It's a local dev shop here run by David Edmondson. Has done a lot of Magento work in the past, and he's kind of shifting more into just pure development work. So if you're interested or in the Atlanta area, check him out and take a look. We really appreciate his support. I'm skipping over kind of events and other announcements, because I didn't get a chance to work on that today. But I know Logan mentions Longhorn PHP. That's what usually pops up on the radar as upcoming. So he mentioned that, and definitely take a look. Our AtlantaPHP.org site that's not on Meetup. Here we have our Google discussion group for just open topics and job postings, as well as our video archive. So you can go back as far as 2012 to see video recordings of our prior meetings. So I think that's all to mention here. So I would just like to welcome esteemed colleague from ShootProof, Brian Morton. He's had over 15 years of experience as a software engineer and architect. Does a lot of work in systems admin and infrastructure design. I know he's done quite a bit with Python as well. He's an Eagle Scout. And if there's anything, Brian, you want to mention that I missed, certainly continue with the bio. So I'd like to just appreciate him being here tonight and let you take it away.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Chris. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, I've structured this a little bit like a lightning talk. Don't have a ton of content, but I'm going to do a lot of show and tell. So hopefully we end up giving everybody a little bit of time back too. Like Chris said, my name is Brian Morton. I'm a software architect at ShootProof, where I work with Chris. And before I get started, I'm going to do a shameless plug. ShootProof is hiring a senior software engineer. This is now a remote-friendly position. So if any of you or anybody you know looking for a great team to come work with, shoot me a note, or Chris, or anybody here. All right, so time for the talk. I want to talk a little bit about static analysis with PHP Stan. So PHP Stan is a really awesome tool. It's actually really easy to use. And I wanted to give everybody a little overview and kind of show you how to use it, show you just how easy it is. So let's start with what is PHP Stan. It's a static analyzer for PHP, and it parses your PHP code and it looks for rules, for violations of rules that are built into it or that you can customize without executing. So this is not the same as a PHP unit test where you're actually executing the code and looking at the result of a function or a method. This is literally just looking through your code, but not just making sure that it's syntactically valid, making sure that everything actually makes sense. Really, really awesome at finding hidden bugs. So if you haven't run this over your code base yet, I highly recommend you do this. I almost guarantee you will find bugs, and it's the kind you'll usually slap your forehead over. It doesn't require writing any runtime tests. It's static. You just configure stuff and run it. And it's pretty easy to use in your command line interface as you're developing. It's also really easy to integrate with CI/CD, and it's one of the better quality tools I recommend there. Finally, it really encourages you to focus your runtime tests, your PHP unit tests on your business logic, where you've got control structures or loops, instead of shooting for code coverage, because you can achieve pretty good code coverage with PHP Stan. And kind of check the basics. Okay, so if you're using Composer, installing this is as easy as Composer require, and you usually mark it as a dev dependency and PHP Stan, and that's it. It'll install PHP Stan. I like to add this little snippet here to my composer.json just so I don't have to remember all the command line switches that I'm running for PHP Stan. I just give it an alias called PHP Stan, and that way I can run Composer PHP Stan, and it will execute the correct command for my project. You might add command line switches there to customize this depending on your needs. Configuration is really pretty simple. So this is the most basic kind of configuration you'd see. Typically, you just have a parameters at the top level of the .neon file, which is kind of like YAML. You'll define a level. That's important because the default may change over time. The level just indicates how in-depth we're going to go with the checks. Level 0 is the most basic. 1 is more in-depth and so on. Up to 8 is currently supported. 8 is where it's kind of critiquing your style a little bit, things that really aren't bugs, but are good practices. And you can see a breakdown of all that on their website, what exactly each level means. I usually like start at level 0, and we're going to give it an array of paths that we want to look in. You could do your whole project. A lot of people will just do their lib directory because sometimes things in scripts or code just aren't up to standards and aren't as important. But you can add multiple paths here for analysis as well as symbol linking, which are two separate things we'll see. All right, so let's go find all the bugs. Let's try it out. I'm going to unshare my presentation here and share my compose window. Can everybody see my IDE here?
Sure can. The font's a little small, so yeah.
Yeah, let's boost it a bit. Good idea.
Presenter mode too.
Presenter mode. All right. Let's try it again. How about now?
Hey, much better.
Oh, you know what though? That's not going to show my tools window. I just realized. That's fine. I'll just adjust the font. All right. Get my services tab back open. Okay, trying again. The code is probably a little bit small, but I'll try to boost the zoom here a little bit. What's more important is actually going to be the terminal window here, because we're going to be running it from here. So what I have here is just a really basic project I put together with some buggy code, as you can imagine. So I've added, hopefully you can see here my scripts, just a little bit I was talking about, where I've got an alias here to invoke my composer command. And I've got a source directory in my project. Everything above that is just composer. I've got a Docker file that I've run this in. Our configuration that we talked about. And another configuration we'll play with here in a moment. So here under source, we have a library. In our library, we just have some exceptions. Don't really do anything. They're just bare exceptions. We've got a class with a little bit of logic in it and a lot of mistakes. And a base container that implements, or rather a my container that implements our base container. And again, it has some buggy logic in it. So here I have a Docker container, and I've got this directory mounted here. We're running PHP 7.4 on here. So we can just run composer PHP Stan. And again, it prints the command that we're executing here and running with this configuration. I've upped the level here a little bit, and I've added this variable, which I'll show you more about in a minute, this configuration variable. So we found 13 errors just in this tiny little project. So let's take a look at some of the stuff it came up with. So this is kind of an interesting one if you're not familiar with it. There's a blog article about it. In the base container, in the library base container, on line 7, it says we have unsafe usage of new static. And what they're talking about here is if you later extend this class, which you have to because it's abstract, the signature of the constructor may actually change and may inadvertently break because this is a static invocation. So this is done at static at runtime. So we never know exactly which constructor we're invoking here. And they talk about some solutions to it there, but they're kind of pointing out, hey, this is a little bit unsafe. This may break at some point in the future. This is a little more basic. We can see here that it's referencing property thing here, and there is no defined property thing. So you're accessing an undefined property here. That may be an error. And then here in my container, we can see it's doing something pretty interesting. It's actually parsing our doc block that was added here. And it understands that array thing 2 is not compatible with our type hint, which is int. And also it gives another error here just because we can see it expects array, but we've given it an int. So it's kind of saying the same thing. Here on line 12, you can see that it understands we're treating it like an array or countable. So that really should be hinted as an array, but we've said that it's an int. So it understands these things aren't compatible with one another. It's also pointed out that our thing exception actually isn't one of our exceptions. You can see here, that's a non-existent thing. So it scanned all this code and understands how to discover the symbols. They've given you a hint here that, this may be some class you just haven't given me the hint to find. So it tells you how to configure your project correctly to find all of your symbols. But you might have typoed this, or I've actually seen projects where they were throwing exceptions that literally did not exist, which will throw a fatal in and of itself. Here we can see it saying this method set thing should return a string, but it's actually returning this, like you would see typically on some setters. So that's obviously a problem if someone's relying on a string return from this, and it's going to generate an error when you try to run it. Finally, in our library class, we've got another undefined property here. So we can see we defined some properties, but not this one. It understands that. It's also done something kind of interesting since we're using PHP 7.4 and we have typed, this property is typed, it is able to understand what kind of values should be assigned to this. And it can see that we've assigned a string to this, which it will not accept. It's actually going to generate an error as well. This is kind of an interesting one too. It will point out where you've called a static, you made a static call against an instance method. So if we go look at my container factory, it's not declared statically, but we've called it statically. So it enforces basic things like that. Here's another great thing it'll catch. This is a really common one. You can see this sprintf has one placeholder and 2 variables passed in. And I've seen it the other way as well. Multiple placeholders, only 1 variable passed in. It will parse this and check for it and point it out to you. Finally, it's pointed out down here. This is a really common thing. So I've actually turned on this pollute scope with always iterable for each. False. Yeah.
Brian, can you do a command plus command plus plus?
I was trying to do it and it doesn't seem to be working, but let me see if I can figure out a way to do it through here. It should be under view, I would think, right?
I think it's in preferences, but not.
Let's see if we can adjust it for you. Hang on. Under appearance, we'll do it size. See if we can boost the size on this. All right, how about
20 or yeah.
A little bit better?
No.
No?
It made the
The toolbar is bigger.
Yeah, that's a yeah. So undo the yeah. Here. Okay. There's another font setting somewhere.
You may have you may be able to make it work in if in the editor general settings. There's a checkbox for change the font size with command and mouse wheel. Yeah, that top one. Let's see if that will let you, command scroll wheel.
Give it a shot. Wheel, hey, look at that.
Yeah,
good work, Spruck. All right, everybody able to see it better now?
Yep.
Yeah,
the
not.
terminal.
It does work.
Great. Hey, great.
All right. Good. Thank you. So I've turned on this extra configuration here. It's kind of wordy, but what it does is when you've got a for each loop going on, by default, it will pollute your outside checks with the variables from your loop. Because technically value is defined here. It's just that if you've ever run into any of the bugs that can happen, for example, with the byref, when you try to use it after the loop, it's really not a good idea. You really ideally should only use your loop iterables inside your loop. So I've turned this value on, or rather turned it off, which is not the default. And it says, don't pollute the scope with your iterable for eaches. So it will point out variable value might not be defined. In reality, it is, but you really shouldn't rely on it because it causes bugs. So that's a good option to turn on. And we'll talk a little more about some of the configuration in a moment. So again, we found 13 errors just, with this installing a package, putting in an alias, and setting, a couple of variables here. These are pretty good variables to set, configuration to set. So easy thing to use against your project without a lot of fuss. I'm going to switch back to my presentation. All right. So I usually recommend, again, starting with level 0, kind of work your way up, get stricter as you go. Keep in mind that if you've got a large project, every time you raise a level on this, you could be in for quite a bit of work. I know we've spent a lot of time getting this implemented in one of our large code bases at Shootproof, and it can take several hours to go through and correct all the small deficiencies and fix the tests as well every time you move a level. Scan directories is really helpful if you've got one of these old projects that has third-party code in the repo. So if you've ever worked on a project like I have before Composer was well supported and well used, you might have some third-party code actually checked in your repo. You need it to resolve all the references as it's checking things, but you don't actually want to analyze it for bugs because it's not your code. So scan directories is something you can use to do that. And you can tell Composer, or rather tell PHP Stan to scan those paths for symbols, but don't analyze them. Normally, when you put things under the analysis tree, everything's analyzed and scanned. You can also use exclude paths here to skip analysis of just some stuff you don't want looked at. These could be particularly messy files that aren't up to standards. Could just be an area of your code base you don't really use anymore or don't care about analyzing. And you can also do regex-based exclusions. I'm not going to show any of them here, but there are ample examples of those in their documentation. But you can exclude very specific errors. Let's say there's something you're doing for a reason you don't want to fix, or you just don't want to deal with right now. You can just exclude it for the time being. You can also use inline doc block style or comment style annotations to skip specific blocks of code. Let's say you don't want to ignore a particular error globally within a file. You could say just this one. I don't want to analyze this code. Another really interesting configuration that a lot of people don't know about is the universal object creates classes. So we've noted that it will point out undefined properties on classes. But if you have a class with properties set at runtime, like an ORM or something that holds your database results, you might be populating those at runtime. And we don't want it to point out that the properties are undefined. They're always going to be undefined. You can put a class, a list of classes. You can put an abstract class or a base model or even an interface into this list. And it will automatically understand that anything in that inheritance tree should be allowed to do this without generating errors. They automatically add simple XML and STD class because those two classes built in have that behavior as well. We talked a little bit about this configuration. It's true by default. I like to set it to false because I don't like using those variables after the loop, and sometimes it can indicate that you've named your loop iterator the same thing as something outside the scope, which will cause a bug. So it's a good thing to set. There's also a project, it's another PHP Stan project called Strict Rules. You can just composer install that, configure it. If you want more defensiveness, and they talk all about the rules that it enables. This is one of them they turn on by default. There's a whole bunch of them, and it's very opinionated about what good code should look like. It's good if you just want a little more defensiveness around your code. And again, focus your unit tests on areas with your logic, conditionals, and loops instead of going for code coverage, because this really gets you a good amount of sanity just when it comes to, did I call a function with the right number of arguments? Were they the right types? Did I return the value that I was expecting to? All of that is covered by PHP Stan without writing and maintaining unit tests. So you can write better code coverage tests for logic that really matters. So here's something kind of brand new that I wanted to show as well. This was just announced, I think, yesterday, and I've linked to the blog article here. So they've added some ability to do exception control, which is pretty cool. I'll show you guys in the editor. You opt into this via configuration. It's backward incompatible behavior. So they don't just turn it on magically for you. You have to enable some configuration, but it's pretty handy. So what it does, it divides exceptions into two definitions. One is checked exceptions, and the other is unchecked exceptions. If you're familiar at all with Java, this is how they do things there. So formally, you declare things as being checked or unchecked. This brings that same behavior to the static analysis of PHP. So an example of a checked exception would be if you like to throw exceptions for kind of some non-exceptional conditions. Like, for example, you might have an exception for if a product was out of stock in your system. That's not terribly exceptional. It's something that can happen. But your system, your code may decide to throw an exception there, and your caller should catch it and present the right error to the user, log it, alert support staff, what have you. An unchecked exception would be like a PDO exception. I couldn't connect to the database, something truly exceptional. You would never want to catch those. You really want those ideally to bubble all the way up, throw an error to the user, hey, we got a bug, we're working on it, log it and alert you. And so those are considered unchecked. We don't want to catch them. We don't want to encourage people to catch them. So when you enable this configuration, it looks at your doc blocks throws annotations. And if you've got checked exceptions that are not in your doc block but are thrown, it will generate an error about that. And you can turn on a separate configuration that will flag any extra exceptions that you throw that are in your throws that are not actually thrown. So it'll help you keep your throws annotations clean, and to help you make sure that you're actually documenting all the checked exception types that are thrown, while not complaining about every single possible thing that could get thrown from within that scope, like a database exception. I'm going to switch back to my IDE and show you a little bit about that. Okay. So to enable this, I'm going to go into this other configuration. Just copy out this new exceptions section, put it into my main configuration. There we go. We will rerun our PHP Stan. All right, so now we've got 15 errors. We had 13 before. And the ones that it's added here are this one. First of all, it says method foo check for in stock throws a checked exception, product out of stock exception, but it's missing from the PHP doc throws tag. So if we go look at that code, here's the method it's talking about. You see there is no doc block, so it's not documenting that we're throwing this product out of stock exception. And here we can see that it is, we've said check for missing exception and throws true. And we've noted which one are our unchecked exception classes. Database exception is not a checked exception. We don't want to worry about that one. That's truly an exceptional thing. We might have a list of those. Again, you can do an inheritance here. You could do an interface. You can do, your base class, what have you here to define what's unchecked. I think they even support a regex as well. So you can very flexibly define what is unchecked and check for the check thing. So if we just go here and say throws product out of stock exception, rerun this, we'll now see our error count drop to 14. All right, that one's disappeared. So we've still got a new error here. My container set thing throws a check exception, thing exception, but it's missing. So here it's going to force us to deal with the fact that the instantiated class thing exception is not found. We're going to come in here and look at this and say, well, wait a minute, that's not a real thing. My IDE is pointing it out. So hopefully we take the opportunity to clean this up as well. All right, I'm going to switch back to my presenter view one more time. And that's it. That's all the show and tell I've got for right now. Hopefully you guys have some questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I think we have some questions here. I'm usually pretty good at kicking the questions off. Also, I created a poll. I thought it would be fun if we did a poll in Zoom and see how many people are running PHP 7 or 8 in production. I'm interested to know. I think everyone's interested to know. I'm guessing it's going to be lots of 7 and maybe a couple 8. But yeah. So my first question would be, do you know if PHP Stan works with GitHub Actions and kind of like some the runner kind of thing? Can you talk a little bit about like how it looks, kind of like integrating this into your pipeline?
Sure. I can't speak specifically to GitHub Actions as I've never integrated it with that before, but I have integrated it with other CI/CD pipelines, including AWS, Code Build, and Jenkins. So in general, the composer scripts, like the one that I point out there, they pass through the return value. And in general, most of the CI/CD tools I've worked with will exit with an error when you give it a non-zero return code from any command. So if you simply add composer PHP Stan to your build steps, it should just do the right thing. So it will return an error. In my case, I've added the command line switch -- no progress, which normally when you run this, it will show you a big list of progress as it goes through files. I don't really want all that in my CI/CD, so I just turn that off, and it just will show, okay, everything worked great, or error, I found 15 errors, and it'll spit out a list of errors like you've seen in my terminal. And you can capture that and return it, store it in a log, whatever you need to do. Does that answer the question?
Cool, yeah. I was messing with GitHub Actions a lot last year, and it's interested to know kind of like some of these newer pipelines that are coming up, like how flexible it is. But it sounds like it's pretty flexible. As long as you have access to Composer and command line, you just add a shell command essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Cool. I guess I'll ask. I think we have a couple questions coming in, and I'm not sure who's checking what. But second question I had was, in InfoSec land, there's SAST and DAST, and I think PHP Stan is considered a SAST, but I figured out I wasn't 100% sure. I'd ask you. Is that like the official terminology of this type of tool?
You'll have to forgive me. I'm not familiar with the terminology. What is DAST?
DAST is Dynamic Application Security Testing, and then SAST is Static Application Security Testing.
I see. Yeah. This definitely is a static analysis tool. While it's not specifically geared toward security, I would say that any type handling bug is potentially a security bug, right? especially if the types that you're passing come from user input. That's generally how these security issues start. So yeah, I would say that performing static analysis is a good security principle. This is not specifically a security static analysis tool, though. I've worked with some of those before. Some of them are highly specialized, and I will say the ones I've worked with generated a lot of false positives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good to know. I was a little bit confused on where this fit, so thanks for clarifying that. All right, let's jump into questions. Where is the questions window? Maybe I have to end the poll. I guess I'll end the poll because I can't see the questions. Panel.
I'll throw some out so I can see what we've got. Someone at Aram asked, does it integrate with PHP Storm?
There is some capability to integrate with PHP Storm. I didn't demonstrate it here. I just ran this through a terminal in my Docker just so I can show you the basic usage. But there is some integration with PHP Storm. I suspect it just uses this instead of its built-in static analyzer. So PHP Storm already does some pretty good static analysis. If you've ever looked at the IDE, it points out a lot of mistakes that you'll make there. I suspect it just swaps it out.
I happen to see I mentioned that you can configure it as a code inspection. I'm not terribly familiar with Storm these days, but hopefully that answers the question. There's definitely seems to be some level of support built in that's outside just straight CLI tools.
Yeah, it's along the lines of you can turn on PHP code sniffer, for example, as like a check, and it'll run it as an additional check in addition to the built-in stuff it does. So it'll point out like on the scroll bar in red or yellow where your errors are, and it'll highlight them and point them out.
Cool. I figured out the Q&A thing. I don't know where that was hiding, but looks like we have a couple people asked those similar questions, and they wanted to know how this tool compared to Psalm or Palm, PSAL.
And whether you can use them at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, you definitely can. How do they compare? Psalm, I think, is a little more full-featured. It definitely has a lot more features in it. It is, in my experience, it's been a little bit slower to run. But that may just be me. It has some other things it can do, like it can do automatic fixes, I think. Some types of errors that it finds. PHP Storm will do that for you as well. And some errors it finds, you can say, oh, tap a button and it'll rename the thing for you. Psalm, I think, also has some ability to detect security vulnerabilities. I think you have to use annotations to tell it where input comes from. But so it's got a few features that this one does not, but it's also more complex. But you can use them both side by side. The only thing is the annotations for Psalm obviously aren't compatible with the ones from PHP Stan and vice versa.
So like if you were to have to, then it's like multiple things to maintain essentially.
Not necessarily, just because again, these don't require any tests to be written. You can configure them both and run them both as part of your CI/CD pipeline if you wanted to.
Yeah, I guess another tool in the tool belt can't hurt. And it, as long as you like have it set up in your pipeline, you just compare the output between the two and kind of like find which one works best for what you're working on. I guess is kind of like, is that how you would approach it?
Yeah, and I would say that PHP Stan is a little more basic. It's very well maintained. They respond very quickly to bug reports. Psalm has a lot more features. It also is a larger project. I can't say if it's as well maintained or not, but I would definitely say PHP Stan is kind of the lightweight analyzer.
Cool. And then Jason here is asking how PHP Stan compares with PHP MD and CS, and does it is there any overlap between these other tools?
Yeah, great question. I do think there's a little bit of overlap between them, especially at the higher levels. So if you go look at PHP Stan's documentation at the rule levels, if you look at things like the level 6 and higher, so level 6 is report missing type hints. Well, that could also be a code standard. So your PHP CS may be configured to point that out. Level 8 reports calling methods and accessing properties on nullable types. That may be something you point out through your PHP mess detector as well as dead code checking. It does that at level 4, and dead code can be part of your mess detector. So there is some overlap in certain places. PHP CS and MD do perform some parsing of the code in order to find those things out, but they usually don't go quite to the level that PHP Stan's rules do. For example, they'll look at your inheritance tree and understand, is your method complying with the parent method's signature, things like that, right? You make sure that everything is actually set up to work correctly.
Cool. I think that answers everybody's question.
Well, we have one more. If you scroll the question thing, Rod is asking about, is it important to scan your test folder or just your main application folder like a source directory or similar?
Yeah, great question. I don't typically run PHP Stan for my tests. Not to say you couldn't, maybe at a level 0 or something. I would say there might be some, if you have a really advanced testing suite, you're going to inherently do some things in your tests that might not appear correct to PHP Stan. For example, I've used mockery before to enable mocking of private methods. So you can actually unit test those protected methods or private methods. And when you do that, PHP Stan's going to point out you're calling a protected method here. It doesn't understand that it's a mock and it can do that. So you may run into a little bit of trouble there with more advanced test suites.
Yeah. Also, another question, Jacob asked, how does Stan compare to the run inspection tools built into PHP Storm?
My experience has been that it's similar, but not quite as thorough. So a good example is a lot of these errors I've introduced in this code base, PHP Storm will point them out. It'll point out that there's a missing property. It will point out that the exception class I defined doesn't actually exist. It'll point out that my return value isn't the correct thing. So it does a lot of these types of checks. I would say it caught 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It caught like 5 of these issues, but PHP Stan pointed out, twice that many. So I would say it is more thorough and allows more flexible configuration.
I think it would probably also be good to point out like the run inspection tools in PHP Storm. That's one of the tabs at the bottom, right? Not the red or yellow lines on to the right of the editor.
Yes, yeah. So you're just referring to where I was running it from?
Yep.
Yeah, I did it this way just so I could show that you could integrate this with CI/CD just as well. That's probably, I would say, the appeal of this tool more than anything is as a CI/CD addition. You certainly can run it locally just to see where your stuff stands, or you could integrate it with the IDE for more convenience. But I was showing the more basic usage here because that's really where I think it shines. If you don't enable these locally and simply put them in your CI/CD, you'd find out about them eventually anyway.
Makes sense. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one actually. Brian, have you can you talk about like performance any on, like this was just, simple demo. Have you seen it with 50,000 lines of code, 100,000 lines, 500,000, does it scale well, or is it something you got to throw more hardware at to get it to be reasonable timeframes, and anything like those topics?
Yeah, great question, Chris. How big? How many? If you can check, how many lines of code is the SP main code base? I don't actually know offhand.
Yeah, let me look real fast.
I'd be curious to know about
find
that.
that.
I think it's at least 100,000. It's a big code base.
Yeah.
So I have scanned some pretty large code bases with it. It performs well. It actually does. There's a whole section on it. It parallelizes the scanning and search for symbols. It does have to have all the symbols resolved before it can go through and then check everything. But that parallelization helps a lot. The parallelization is asynchronous, and so they're in a really big code base, you can have to adjust some timeouts so that you don't run into a timeout waiting for an async process. You have to bump that up a little bit sometimes. You can also have to raise the memory limit. I've had to do that again in the SP site project.
Cool, thanks. I'm looking at our repo here, but I'm not spotting it right away, so I'm Googling here. Something was on Stack Overflow.
It's sizable. It's I would say that's probably the largest PHP code base I've worked with before, so it's pretty sizable.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tools gives you a line LOC or whatever output. Is it like PHP CS maybe? I can't remember offhand which one is it.
Yeah, that may be right. I can break out my work laptop and have a look. I'm sure it's in GitHub somewhere, but it's a pretty substantially big code base. I think when I scanned it at one point, it was analyzing 2,200 files in our library, so it was pretty big.
But there, so
Brian just told me 452,000 lines of code and deploy/lib. Thanks, Brian. Other Brian.
You said 450,000?
Yeah, 452K lines of code. He said.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot more than I thought. So yeah, it's a big code base.
Cool.
So
and yeah, to make that work, I did have to bump up some timeouts and some memory limits. That is a pretty big code base.
I was going to ask is, so when you're talking about parallelizing the running of this, I know like Jenkins and some of the CI/CD stuff, you can split out the steps to different workers and kind of like run things on multiple servers. But I guess given this, when you run PHP Stan, it's like only on like one worker, right? Or can you?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
that's correct. So it runs multiple threads, so it'll just use multiple cores on the CPU, and you can configure all that stuff. It's got an auto detection if you don't, but it's using that to go look through to discover files. Really, it can't analyze them all until it's discovered them all.
Yeah.
So it'll go through and discover them all in parallel, and then it will analyze them all in parallel. But all of that does have to happen within one process, right? So it's using workers to do that, but there's a single process.
Okay, cool. That helps. Oh, looks like we did have another question come in. Is there some bug that you could talk about that PHP Stan caught that you're like that was mission critical?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I just took it a few weeks ago and actually ran it against a big project. It was not shoe proof. And give me 1 second. I'm logging into the pull request I made. It was an enormous pull request I made. Fix all the things. But nice. I remember there were a couple of things on there, and I said, "Oh my gosh, how did this ever work?" Right? And the answer was it didn't.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up my pull request here. Mine. Here we go. Looking for my merged PR here. Okay, I found it. Yeah, so I went through, how many lines of code did I change here? Let's see here. Doesn't actually show that. The bucket is not my favorite. Oh, here we go. 105 files, 10 commits. Still doesn't show me how many lines, but a lot of lines of code I changed here. And let me go find like a particularly bad bug in here that it found. Yeah. I would say two of them that stand out are mistyped exception names. So there was just a typo in this exception name, but because it was typoed, it wouldn't actually throw an exception. So the exceptional condition would occur, and then instead of throwing an exception there, it would fatal and fall on the floor because I was throwing a class that didn't exist. That's a particularly showstopper. Another bad one was the sprintf that I showed you. That was happening as well, and it was doing the sprintf in an exception that was being thrown. So again, same problem. It would not throw the exception correctly because it wasn't putting the string together correctly. Looking for some other good ones in here. Oh, I found a class that just didn't exist at all. It was just being referenced and like was not there at all.
Like dead code, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it was actually the inverse problem. So it was a case where a class was it was saying make a new class, but there was no new class. That thing just wasn't in the tree. It was a model. And the table existed. It was like a real database table that just nobody ever wrote the model class for it. Somebody just forgot that. This was another magical one right here. I'll paste it in the window. You can see what they did here. It was an easy.
You're not sharing your screen anymore.
Yeah. Here, I'll put it in the chat here. I think.
Oh yeah, the answer thing.
Yeah. Can I do that?
Yeah. Typed answer, and then I think we hit the that we answered everything.
New thing exception, invalid type, pass for search function. Yeah. So here, I'll send this.
Yep.
So if you look at this carefully, oh, that's the fixed one. Sorry. Let me give you the busted one. I was reading my diff wrong. Here, I'll trash that and give you the right one. Sorry, I'm having to anonymize this for the protect the identities of those involved. So you can see what they did here. There was an sprintf, and what they meant to do was put the parentheses on the outside so that the invalid type was interpreted into the sprintf. But what they ended up doing was terminating the sprintf and then passing a second parameter into the exception.
Nice.
Yeah. But PHP Stan was smart enough to go, wait a minute, that exception only takes one argument. This is broken. And you messed up your sprintf as well. So it pointed that out. Yeah, a lot of little stuff, though. If you run it through your code base, you'll be amazed at what you find.
Yeah, the things you miss, human error related bugs.
Oh, totally. And this is what code review is designed to prevent. But code review only gets you so far, and especially with a really large code base or a large PR. I mean, people's eyes get tired. They stop paying attention after a while. Computers don't.
Yep. The more we can automate it and rely on the computers to solve the problem, the better. Awesome. Unless there's any more questions, I'll throw out my final PSA there. Don't forget to update your composer. If you have any packages or libraries, go check out the composer issue for explanation on why you should use the double. hype, and documentation is always good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for talking and giving the presentation this month. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so
you're
much. This
very-
was kind of spur of the moment, like random, kind of last minute, not quite last minute as some of these, but short notice. So we appreciate you jumping right on it for us, Brian.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And this is a great PSA. I may steal it and post it on my LinkedIn or Facebook or something.
Yeah, I'll post it on Twitter so that everybody can have a copy of it. I made it a JPEG, so it's
This
easy
is
to
great.
share. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, lots of good feedback from the talk. So so good job. Definitely give some more talks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, run out and install PHP Stan or Solom or some static analysis tool on your favorite big project. You'll find lots of great stuff and improve your code quality.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for joining and for asking questions and participating.
Yep. Well, we'll do the poll again next month and see if the results are how different they are. But 10 people, 7, and 1 person is on 8. So well, it's interesting. I think I've had a couple of people ask, like, when are we upgrading to 8? Like, all right, let's wait a little bit.
We're on both. I just wasn't allowed to answer the poll.
Nice. Oh yeah, because the presenters.
Yeah.
We should get the person who said they're on 8 to give a talk on what blew up.
Right. What did they have to do to get it to work? Yeah.
I don't know exactly what we had to do to get it to work, but the person who ran the project is taking a month off, so that maybe it was a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. I think just updating the composer dependencies, right? Like that like vacation inducing, I think, right there. Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks, everyone. Definitely check out Boston PHP, Gene's Agile Talk, and we'll get the June meeting announced here in the next week or so. I believe will also be on Agile stuff. So definitely stay tuned for more Merge PHP. Thank you to my cohorts. Bobby and Chris. I'll see you guys next month.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
So
Don't forget Ben, too, actually.
Thanks, Ben.
I'm sneaky.
Oh yeah, Ben. Thank you. The person responsible for putting this whole thing together.
I'm a meetup list now, though, right? So I'm a nomad, I guess.
Yeah, you moved, right? Where are you now, Ben?
I mean,
Yeah, I'm back down in Columbus. So
Oh,
you're
okay,
closest
yeah.
to me, actually. Yeah.
Cool.
And once this is back in person, eventually I'll drive up and say hey.
Cool.
I probably won't.
What?
Yeah.
It's like a 19-hour drive. I'm all set.
Yeah, no big deal. All right. Thanks, guys. You have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. You too.
Take it easy.
Right.